Her voice sliced through the violin music like broken glass. Well, some people chase dreams. Others chase paychecks. Guess which one keeps the lights on? Laughter rippled across the table, glasses clinking in agreement. I sat frozen, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my mother's smile stretch wide under the chandelier glow. She raised her champagne toward my cousin Tristan, the corporate lawyer, the golden child who wore his salary like a crown. The bride looked away. My aunt coughed into her napkin. Nobody defended me. What she didn't know, was that every rose centerpiece, every plate of salmon, every inch of silk draped across that ballroom ceiling had been paid for by me. Quietly. Completely. Anonymously. Because 3 months ago, she'd called me crying, begging me to just help out a little with the wedding costs. Then erased my name from every conversation like I'd never existed. I'd given everything. She'd given me nothing but shame. So I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the event coordinator with a white envelope in my hand. Inside was one sentence that would change everything. My name is Nara Quincy. And that night, my mother learned that silence has a price, and I was done paying it. Welcome to Revenge with Precious, where we share real stories of betrayal, resilience, and the courage to stand up for yourself. These are tales of people who refused to stay silent, who drew boundaries when love turned toxic, and who chose their peace over family obligation. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, these stories are for you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see your own life. Please, watch till the end. Let's get started. The ballroom sparkled like something out of a magazine. Chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting golden light across 200 guests dressed in their finest. Servers glided between tables carrying trays of champagne and appetizers. The air smelled like roses and expensive perfume. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt wrong. I sat at table 7, tucked between distant relatives I barely recognized. My mother held court at the main table, laughing with my Aunt Belinda, gesturing dramatically with her wine glass. She looked radiant in her emerald gown, pearls gleaming at her throat. From across the room, she caught my eye and smiled, not warmly, but like a cat watching a mouse it had already caught. My stomach tightened. I knew that look. I'd seen it 1,000 times before. The look that said I was about to become the punchline to a joke I hadn't heard yet. The violinist began a new song. Guests leaned into conversation. And my mother, with perfect timing, raised her voice just loud enough for our side of the room to hear. You know what's funny, she said, setting her glass down with a soft clink. Some people work their whole lives for stability. Real careers. Real benefits. And then others. She paused, her eyes sliding toward me. Others just do whatever feels good in the moment. The table went quiet. My cousin Tristan smirked. My uncle nodded knowingly. I felt heat crawl up my neck. She continued, voice dripping with false sympathy. Nara's been freelancing 4 years now. Making her little graphics on the computer. I keep telling her, honey, when are you going to get a real job? Laughter erupted. Not cruel, exactly. More like the kind of laughter people give when they agree but don't want to seem harsh. My Aunt Belinda touched my mother's arm gently. Vivian, don't embarrass the girl. But my mother waved her off. I'm not embarrassing her. I'm just being honest. Someone has to tell her the truth. I stared at my plate. The salmon looked dry. My hands trembled in my lap. This wasn't new. My mother had never believed in my work. When I told her I was going into graphic design, she laughed. When I landed my first client, she said it was probably a favor. When I bought my own apartment at 27, she said I must have gotten lucky with timing. Nothing I did was ever real to her. Not real enough, anyway. Not like Tristan with his law degree and corner office. Not like my sister Kenna, who worked in finance and sent our mother monthly updates about her 401k. I was the mistake. The detour. The one who never quite figured it out. But the truth was, I'd been quietly successful for years. I designed marketing campaigns for luxury brands. My work had been featured in magazines. I'd paid off my student loans in 3 years. I owned property. I had savings. I just didn't brag about it. And because I didn't brag, my mother assumed I had nothing. That night, sitting in that ballroom surrounded by 200 people, I realized something. She didn't just misunderstand my life. She erased it. 6 months earlier, my mother called me on a Thursday afternoon. Her voice was light, almost musical. "Nara, darling. Do you have a minute?" I was in the middle of editing a campaign for a jewelry brand, but I paused. "Sure, Mom. What's up?" She sighed dramatically. "It's about your cousin's wedding. You know how close we are to Fiona. She's like a daughter to me." I waited. "Well, the thing is, they're having some budget issues. Nothing major. Just some last-minute vendor problems. And I thought, since you work with creative people, maybe you could help make things look nice?" I hesitated. "What kind of help?" "Oh, you know. Decorations. Flowers. Just some touches to make it feel special. Nothing too expensive. Maybe you could call in a few favors?" I should have said no. I should have asked questions. But her voice was so sweet, so hopeful, that I found myself saying, "Sure, Mom. I'll see what I can do." The planning meetings started 2 weeks later. My mother took over immediately, acting like a general commanding an army. She had opinions about everything: napkin colors, table arrangements, even the font on the menu cards. Every time I suggested something, she dismissed it. "Nara, this isn't one of your little projects. This is a real event." I bit my tongue. When the florist quoted a price, my mother gasped. "That's outrageous. Nara, can't you negotiate? You work with these people, don't you?" I didn't. But I made calls anyway. Within a week, I'd found vendors willing to work within the budget, friends from previous collaborations who trusted my vision. My mother barely acknowledged it. At the next meeting, she sent a group text thanking everyone who stepped up to save the day. My sister Kenna's name was on the list. Mine wasn't. I stared at my phone, reading it 3 times. Kenna had done nothing but show up to 1 meeting. I'd coordinated 6 vendors. But my mother had written me out of the story entirely. A month before the wedding, the caterer demanded a deposit. My mother called me at midnight, voice shaking. "Nara, I don't know what to do. If we don't pay by tomorrow, they'll cancel. This will ruin everything. The whole family will be humiliated." I rubbed my eyes, exhausted. "How much?" $8,000. My stomach dropped. "Mom, I know. I know. But I don't have it. Your father's between contracts, and Kenna just bought a car. Please, Nara. Just this once. I'll pay you back." I didn't believe her. But I also couldn't let the wedding fall apart. Not when Fiona had been nothing but kind to me growing up. I transferred the money that night. $8,000. Gone in a single click. The next morning, I checked my messages. No thank you. Just a single text from my mother. "Try not to make this about yourself." I saved that message. Not for evidence. For clarity. 2 weeks before the wedding, the venue coordinator called me directly. "Miss Quincy, there's a balance of $12,000 still outstanding. Your mother said you'd be handling it?" My breath caught. "She said what?" "She listed you as the financial contact. Said you were covering the reception costs." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. And if it's not paid? We'll have to cancel the booking. I thought about walking away. Letting it all collapse. Watching my mother scramble to explain why the wedding fell apart. But then I thought about Fiona. About the guests who'd already booked flights. About the humiliation that would follow my entire family. So I paid it. $12,000. On top of the $8,000 I'd already given. $20,000 total. More than I'd ever spent on anything except my apartment. And my mother never even asked if I could afford it. She just assumed I would. Because that's what I always did. I met with the event planner 3 days before the wedding. Her name was Sienna, a sharp woman in her 40s with a tablet and a no-nonsense attitude. Everything's confirmed, she said, scrolling through her checklist. Flowers, catering, venue, lighting. Your mother's been very involved. I nodded. Can I ask you something? She looked up. Of course. Whose name is on the invoices? She hesitated. Your mother's. She's listed as the primary contact and host. I smiled tightly. Can you change that? To mine. Nara Quincy. I want every invoice, every receipt, every final bill to show that I was the one who paid. Sienna studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Consider it done. I handed her a sealed envelope. And if anyone asks why, give them this. She took it carefully. What's inside? The truth. The wedding rehearsal was chaos. My mother floated through the venue like a celebrity, accepting compliments from every direction. Vivian, this place is stunning. You have such an eye for detail. How did you pull this off? She smiled graciously, never once mentioning my name. I stood in the back, watching. My sister Kenna approached, champagne in hand. You okay? She asked. Fine. Mom's in her element, huh? I didn't answer. Kenna sighed. Look, I know she can be a lot. But she's just proud. This wedding means everything to her. Does it? I asked quietly. Because it didn't mean enough to say thank you. Kenna frowned. What do you mean? Nothing. Forget it. She touched my arm. Nara, if something's wrong, it's not, I lied. I'm just tired. She didn't push. But I could see the question in her eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my hotel room staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment my mother had dismissed me. Every time she'd called my work a hobby. Every time she'd introduced me as still figuring things out. I thought about the $20,000 I'd spent. Money I'd earned through late nights and client pitches and campaigns that had won awards. Money that meant nothing to her because it didn't come from a cubicle. I thought about the envelope I'd given Sienna. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence. Invoice voided. Host withdrawn. Event funded entirely by Nara Quincy. I didn't know what would happen when she opened it. But I knew I couldn't sit through one more dinner pretending everything was fine. I couldn't smile through one more joke about my little graphics. So I closed my eyes and waited for morning. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and soft sunlight. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy dress that wouldn't draw attention. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to watch. The ceremony was beautiful. Fiona looked radiant in her gown, her husband beaming beside her. My mother cried delicate tears, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked like the picture of a proud family matriarch. After the vows, guests moved to the ballroom for the reception. The space was breathtaking. Ivory drapes cascaded from the ceiling. Crystal vases held white roses. Candles flickered on every table. It was everything I'd envisioned when I first spoke to the vendors. Everything I'd paid for. As I walked in, the coordinator caught my eye and nodded slightly. The envelope was still sealed. She was waiting for my signal. I nodded back. Not yet. Dinner was served in courses. Salad. Soup. Salmon with roasted vegetables. The food was excellent. The conversation was polite. My mother held court at the head table, telling stories and laughing loudly. She was in her element. Midway through the main course, she stood and tapped her glass with a fork. The room quieted. I just want to say a few words, she began, her voice warm and steady. Planning this wedding has been one of the greatest joys of my life. Seeing my beautiful niece marry the love of her life, it's a reminder of what really matters. Family. Commitment. Hard work. She paused, scanning the room. Her eyes landed on me briefly, then moved on. Some people talk about success. But real success is showing up. Doing the work. Not just chasing dreams, but building something real. Applause rippled through the crowd. My hands stayed flat on the table. She continued. I'm so proud of my daughter Kenna, who helped coordinate so much of this. And of course, my nephew Tristan, who's making partner at his firm next month. More applause. Tristan raised his glass, grinning. My mother smiled at them both. Then she turned toward my section of the room. And Nara's here too, of course. Still doing her creative work. We all need dreamers, right? Laughter. Light. Polite. But it cut like a blade. My Aunt Belinda shifted uncomfortably. My uncle looked down at his plate. Even Fiona, the bride, glanced at me with something like pity. My mother sat down, satisfied. The room moved on. But I didn't. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. My chair scraped softly against the floor. A few people looked up. My mother frowned. Nara, where are you going? Just stepping out for a moment, I said quietly. I walked through the ballroom, past tables of guests, past the dance floor where the DJ was setting up. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked if I was okay. I found Sienna near the kitchen entrance, tablet in hand. Now, I said softly. She nodded. You're sure? I'm sure. She pulled the envelope from her bag and walked toward the venue manager, a tall man in a gray suit. I watched as she handed it to him, watched as he opened it and read the single line inside. His eyebrows rose. He looked at Sienna. She nodded toward me. He walked over, envelope still in hand. Ms. Quincy? Yes. This note says you funded the entire event. Is that correct? Yes. He glanced back toward the ballroom. And you want us to make an announcement? No, I said. I just want the bills corrected. And I want one thing said during the final toast. What's that? I told him. I didn't go back inside. I stood in the hallway, watching through the glass doors as the reception continued. The cake was brought out, 3 tiers of white fondant and sugar flowers. Fiona and her husband posed for photos, smiling as the photographer snapped away. My mother stood beside them, beaming. Then the best man stood to give his toast. He was funny and charming, and the room laughed in all the right places. When he finished, the venue manager stepped forward with a microphone. The room quieted, confused. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, I need to make a brief correction. Faces turned toward him. My mother's smile faltered. There's been an administrative update regarding tonight's event. All invoices and final billing have been corrected to reflect the actual host and financial sponsor. He paused. This reception was made possible entirely by Ms. Nara Quincy. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Every head in the room turned, searching. My mother's face went white. Kenna's mouth fell open. Tristan looked genuinely confused. Fiona stared at the manager, then at my mother, then toward the hallway where I stood just out of sight. The manager continued calmly. Miss Quincy covered all costs, including venue, catering, florals, and coordination. We wanted to ensure credit was given where it was due. He set the microphone down and walked away. The silence stretched. Then the whispers started. Low. Urgent. Spreading like wildfire. My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. She scanned the room, eyes wild, searching for me. But I was already gone. I walked out into the cool night air, my heels clicking against the pavement. My phone buzzed in my purse. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it would say. By the time I reached my car, my phone had buzzed 17 times. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, and finally looked. 12 texts. 5 missed calls. All from my mother. The messages ranged from confused to furious. What did you do? Why would you embarrass me like this? Call me right now. I didn't. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past my window. My hands were steady on the wheel. For the first time in months, I felt calm. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window. My phone kept buzzing. I ignored it. Around midnight, Kenna called. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Nara. Her voice was tight. What the hell happened? I corrected a lie, I said simply. You paid for the wedding? She asked. All of it? Yes. Why didn't you tell anyone? I tried. Mom erased me from every conversation. She took credit for everything I did, then mocked me in front of 200 people. Kenna was quiet for a long moment. She's devastated. So was I. Nara, she's our mother. And I'm her daughter, I said quietly. But she's never treated me like one. Kenna sighed. This is going to cause problems. It already did. She just didn't see it until tonight. What do you want me to say to her? Nothing, I said. This isn't about you. She hung up without another word. I set the phone down and stared out at the city. Somewhere out there, my mother was probably crying. Probably calling me selfish. Probably rewriting the story so she was the victim. I didn't care anymore. The next morning, my father called. His voice was calm, measured. Nara. We need to talk. About what? You know what? I waited. He sighed. Your mother is very upset. You humiliated her in front of the entire family. She humiliated me first, I said. That was a private comment. What you did was public. So was her joke about my income, Dad. 200 people heard it. He paused. She didn't mean it the way you took it. Then how did she mean it? Silence. I don't know what you want from us, Nara. I wanted respect, I said quietly. I wanted her to see me. Just once. But she never did. So I made sure everyone else could. You've hurt her. Good, I said. And hung up. My hands shook. But I didn't cry. Days passed. My phone stayed quiet. No calls from my mother. No texts from Kenna. My Aunt Belinda sent a short message. You did the right thing. She needed to hear it. I didn't reply. Work kept me busy. I had 3 campaigns to finish and a pitch meeting with a new client. Life moved forward. But at night, alone in my apartment, I thought about my mother's face when the manager made the announcement. The shock. The betrayal. The disbelief. Part of me felt guilty. A small, childish part that still wanted her approval. But the rest of me felt free. I'd spent my entire life trying to prove I was enough. Trying to earn a place at her table. And all it took was one public moment to realize I didn't need her table anymore. I had my own. 3 weeks later, I received an email from a wedding magazine. They'd heard about the event and wanted to feature it in their next issue. Elegant garden reception, a family affair. I almost deleted it. But then I saw the photo attachments. The ballroom. The florals. The cake. Everything I'd designed and funded. At the bottom of the email was a request. We'd love to credit the designer and coordinator. Can you provide details? I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. I replied with my name, my portfolio link, and a brief description of my role. 2 days later, they confirmed. The feature would include my name in bold. Event design and funding by Nara Quincy. My mother would see it. Everyone would. And this time, she couldn't erase me. The magazine came out a month later. I bought 3 copies. One for myself. One for my office. And one I mailed to my mother's house with no note attached. She didn't call. But Kenna did. She saw it, Kenna said quietly. And? She cried. I didn't respond. Nara, she's not going to apologize. You know that, right? I don't need her to, I said. I just needed her to see the truth. She does now. For what it's worth. I think she's embarrassed. Good, I said. Maybe embarrassment will teach her what respect couldn't. Kenna sighed. You're really not going to forgive her? I didn't say that, I replied. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. She hurt me. And I'm not going back to being invisible just to make her comfortable. Kenna didn't argue. We hung up quietly. Months passed. My work flourished. The wedding feature brought new clients, high-profile ones who saw my name and wanted my vision. I was busier than I'd ever been. Happier, too. One evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Nara. My mother's voice. Soft. Uncertain. I almost hung up. But I didn't. Mom. I saw the article, she said. I know. Silence stretched between us. You really paid for everything, she asked. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? I laughed bitterly. I tried. You didn't listen. She trailed off. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said quietly. You just assumed I had nothing because I didn't brag about it. You made me the punchline without ever asking if I was okay. She was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry, she finally whispered. It was the first time she'd ever said those words to me. I don't know if that's enough, I said honestly. I know, she replied. But I needed to say it. We talked for 20 minutes. It wasn't warm. It wasn't healing. But it was real. She admitted she'd been wrong. Admitted she'd let her pride cloud her judgment. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Just understanding. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed. But because I'd finally heard the words I'd been waiting for my whole life. A week later, she sent a card. Inside was a single sentence. I see you now. I put it on my fridge. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. That sometimes, the people who hurt us most are capable of change. They just need to be held accountable first. And I'd finally learned how to do that. A year later, I was hired to design another wedding. This time for strangers. A couple who'd seen my work in the magazine and wanted exactly what I'd created. The event was smaller. More intimate. But just as beautiful. During the reception, the groom stood and gave a speech thanking everyone who'd made the day possible. And when he said my name, the room erupted in applause. I stood in the back, smiling. No bitterness. No invisibility. Just quiet pride. As I watched the couple dance under string lights I'd chosen, I thought about my mother's voice at that first wedding. The mockery. The dismissal. And I realized something. Her words hadn't broken me. They'd freed me. Because that night, I'd finally stopped waiting for her approval. I'd given it to myself. And that was worth more than any applause. More than any magazine feature. More than any apology. I'd learned to see myself. And once you do that, no one can make you invisible again. Thank you for watching this story. If moments like these resonate with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who couldn't see you, then you're not alone. We share stories like this every single day, real accounts of people who found their voice, set their boundaries, and walked into the life they deserved. Subscribe so you never miss next upload, and share your own story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Compliments of the season. I love you all.